Hold up.
Today we're going to be talking all about Twitter. And I know Twitter is a platform that intimidates a lot of people, but I want to let you know it's something that does not have to intimidate you. It's incredibly easy to master, as well as the variety that is available on Twitter makes for so many different opportunities for increasing traffic and more. So let's dive into the intro to Twitter. So we're going to call this one Take on Twitter. I want every single person to feel absolutely empowered at the end of this training. Let's talk about Twitter's purpose. Twitter is great for engagement. It's a place where you can relate with people one-on-one, whether it's prospective clients, whether it's your audience. It's incredible for having meaningful conversations. It's amazing for customer service, which is a reason why many corporate brands are on Twitter, so that they can socially listen, figure out what their customers are saying, respond directly to criticisms or enthusiasm from their customers. Real-time response. This is kind of cool. So Twitter is alive all the time, whereas on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, there can be a little bit of a delay. On Twitter, everything is real time. You can respond to somebody in an instant. You can get a response from them 2 seconds later. It's just so fast. It's really a cool platform. As well as trend research. It's a great way to find out what's going on in your industry, find out the latest, find out what's going on in the economy, politics, etc. You get to see the real-time responses from celebrities, politicians, thought leaders. It's just incredible. So Twitter is something I absolutely love, and I want you guys to dive in. Don't be afraid. Let's start to look at it. Now, one of the things that's important to note is that with Twitter, there is one major limitation, and that is the number of characters that you can use. On Twitter, you are limited to 140 characters per tweet, which is interesting. Now, there is an exception for links. Certain links don't count against your character limit, but most things that you're going to be tweeting are going to be limited to that 140 characters. Now, Twitter's constantly tweaking this. Sometimes they say, oh, it's going to be unlimited. I don't foresee that happening anytime soon, although some people speculate that's going to change with Facebook reigning supreme. One other thing that's interesting too is they're starting to move towards usernames not being a part of the character limit. So that's the important limitation to remember with Twitter. Twitter's demographics are a little bit different than any other platform. There's a pretty even split between the females and males on Twitter. But one thing that's really interesting is it's one of the only platforms where the number of males is increasing and soon will absolutely overtake the number of females. Now, there's a ton of speculation as to why that is, but ultimately I think it comes down to the fact that there are so many athletes on Twitter. There are real-time tweets about the draft, about changes, about trades within the athletic associations. So that's something we're going to want to keep our eye on, and remember that the increasing male presence on Twitter is going to reign supreme. Most ages are on Twitter, which is a little bit different than most platforms, but it's important to recognize that ages 18 through 49 is the strongest presence on Twitter. Now that's a pretty big range, which is great because it means that you can reach almost anyone in your demographic. Unless your demographic is younger, they're still present on Twitter, but this is the age where you're going to see the majority of users on Twitter. It's a really diverse platform as well, as you'll see that there are people in every single type of demographic. All ethnicities are represented on Twitter. Every single country pretty much is on Twitter. You can find people in just all different walks of life, which makes for a really cool platform because you can connect with somebody in Kuwait or Ireland or the United States or Canada just as fast as you can reach them anywhere else. Now, one cool thing that I love about Twitter is it's a little less formal, which means that you can have more fun. It's a place where you don't have to make sure that all of your grammar is 100% perfect. Now, you're not going to want to make common grammar mistakes like "your" spelled incorrectly or the wrong variation of a word, but you can easily abbreviate things. You can have a little bit more fun. You don't have to overthink every single response. So let's take a look at what Twitter actually looks like. Twitter's a little different than Instagram. It's a little more similar to Facebook in that you can use it on a desktop as easily as you can on your mobile. So here's what the Twitter feed looks like on your desktop. You can see there's home, moments, which is going to talk to you a little bit about the big things that are happening in your industry, or at least those that Twitter chooses to feature. You can see your notifications, what people are following you, who is mentioning you, those that are interacting or directly tag you in something, as well as messages. Now, messages aren't quite as important on Twitter because there are a lot of spam messages on Twitter, which we'll get into in Twitter etiquette. But as you can see, here you can easily track the different trending tweets all throughout here. Mine is specific to Minneapolis because that's where I live. You can see your notifications. You can specifically see the mentions, so anyone who mentions your name. It gives you suggestions for who to follow. And then if you click here, you can see your profile. Now the profile is pretty easy. You have your main image, you have your profile image, a little summary, as well as a link, and then some little tidbits about yourself. But then here you can also dive into the photos and videos that you've posted, how many people you're following, how many followers you have, and whose content you have liked on Twitter. It's also cool because here you can see your tweet activity, how many impressions your content is getting. You can see I was a little busier before. I ran all my trips to Memphis and Boston and such, so my impressions have gone down a little bit this week. And you can edit your profile within this tab here. So when you click on your profile, edit your profile, that's where you can edit everything. Now to tweet on Twitter, it's really easy. You just hit tweet. You can add an image, you can add a GIF or a GIF, depending on what you want to say, add a poll, you can even add your location. I don't personally add my location because it already says I'm in Minneapolis. People don't need to know specifically where I live. To access Twitter on your mobile, you're going to want to download the Twitter app within your app store. Now this is Twitter right here. And when you access Twitter, it's very similar to the desktop version. It's a little more pared down, but here you're able to see all of the same content that is available on the desktop. So when you go to Twitter's application, you'll see there's an icon at the bottom that says Home. This is where you can see all of the tweets that are recent from the people that you follow. So you can see the articles, the links, the graphics. Now, one thing that I'm starting to really see on Twitter is that the simple tweets don't do as well as those that have a link or an image or a video. It's starting to really trend towards those rich content tweets, which is kind of a cool trend that I'm seeing. So it's just something that I predict is going to continue to become more and more heavy on Twitter. Here's where you go to your notifications to see what people are saying about you, if they're mentioning you, or if they respond to something that you tweet. Moments, where you can see the latest news on social media from Twitter. You can also see your messages on the Twitter mobile app, and this is where you can reply to the messages directly, or up in this right-hand corner, you can create a message to send it to someone in particular. And then if you go down to this icon that says Me, this is where you're going to access the mobile version of your profile. There are a couple of things that are cool within here because you can easily edit your profile on the go. You can also tweet, as you can see up here. You can search. You can look at some of the analytics and ads within Twitter. You can also, and this is really cool, you can manage multiple accounts on Twitter just within the mobile app. So if you go here, you have the option to create new accounts or add existing accounts that you already manage. And this is a great way to easily switch back and forth between the different accounts that you manage. And now we're going to jump into the next video where we talk about how to use Twitter.